interesting piece, isn't this? Now, you might be wondering what it is. It's a rebus, which is a musical puzzle that hides words in the notes. If you want to, you can pause the video, take a moment to see if you can decode it. In any case, this is what it is. Lass das fad, fass das echte. This translates roughly to English as leave that which is insipid alone and cling to the genuine. I think this sounds like a great piece of advice for any developing artist, and indeed it is. This particular rebus was part of a small set of pieces that Robert Schumann assembled for his beloved eldest daughter Marie when she turned 7. Let's take a look at the title page of this booklet. So here you can see in the center, Stückchen fürs Klavier, along with an adorable little message on the side here. The first 2 lines read, for Marie's 7th birthday, the 1st of September, 1848. And the last line here is, gemacht von Papa, which means made by Dad. So this little booklet right here is the origin of Schumann's perhaps most played work, Album for the Young, Opus 68. Apparently, Schumann was rather dissatisfied with the children's music of his time, so he took it upon himself to create some beginner-level pieces that had master-level artistry. Now, people familiar with his output might be wondering now, what about the Kinderscenen? Are those not children's pieces? In fact, they really aren't. These are pieces about childhood for adults looking back, not for children looking forward to a brave new world. So then, within a month or 2 of little Marie's birthday, Schumann quickly composed the rest of the pieces, and 43 of them eventually made their way to publication by the end of the year. Even under normal circumstances, I think the speed would be quite surprising, not to mention the social unrest and all the revolutions that were ongoing at the time. 1848 and 1849 were the years of revolution in Dresden, where Schumann lived. In fact, in 1849, he was forced to flee the city with his family. At the same time, children's education was also undergoing a revolution. Previously, children were basically viewed as, small, incomplete adults who were in need of rigid shaping and discipline. However, this idea was being replaced by a more enlightened one, which was that children are individuals who are capable of developing reason and moral sense through experiences and exploration. Rousseau first came up with this idea in his work, Émile, and by this time, more and more people had become sympathetic with this view. Obviously, Schumann certainly embraced it. He took great care to produce this set. You might imagine that a great composer might be able to just put something down and then call it a day, especially considering that all these pieces are so small and seemingly so simple. But that's really not the case. Everything in this album came through multiple stages of editing, and some are even quite significant. Let me show you now an interesting example, which is the Armes Waisenkind. So let me get this up. I have here the sketch version of this piece. Now, the title had actually gone through quite a couple of changes. In the sketch you see here, it is called Armes Bettlerkind, which I think translates to poor beggar's child. So now I'll play a little bit of this for you. that you've had a little bit of a look at that, we can take a look at this version in the Marie's booklet. So this one, of course, the name is different again. This is the Liedchen eines armes Kindes, which translates to Song of a Pauper Child. Poor pauper's child. So of course now I will play a little bit of this for you as well, up to the same area as I had gone there. So, there are a couple of interesting things here. Let's begin from here. If we take a look at the sketch versus what's in the Marie's booklet, I do believe that the stuff in the sketch comes first. So he wrote this before refining it here. You can notice that he lacks the repeat symbol for the beginning of the B section. Maybe, I mean, he has some parts in the sketch that he didn't flesh out the left-hand form. So maybe he has already got the idea of making a repeat, but just didn't get down to actually writing it. But something else that is a little bit more of a noticeable change is that you can see here when he goes, we have the return of the B to the A section, when the A section comes back again. He used to have the dotted figure, which is but then over here in the Marie's booklet, this has changed in the left hand, instead of the dotted rhythm, to a running series of 16th notes, which I will play again. So, I mean, that changes when it comes back, and I think it provides a nice bit of freshness and variety. We can take a look now, just gonna put this over here, at what we have in the fair copy. Now here we see this title has finally been changed to Armes Waisenkind, which is what we now know today, the poor orphan child. And before I say anything, let me just play this. Now maybe if you've been paying attention, you'll see the very important and very interesting change, which is that he has now changed the opening figure, which was previously dotted rhythm, into just straight up 16th notes. And obviously he had the dotted rhythm in both the sketch and in the Marie's booklet, but he decided to change it finally in the fair copy. So personally, I believe that this change was made for good reason. Now, the dotted rhythm that he had in the sketch and in the Marie's booklet, I believe that this kind of dotted rhythm might imply a bit more of a skipping character. And in context of the idea that he was maybe trying to present, which is, a poor orphan child, perhaps a skipping character is not really what we want, right? So I think by changing that to just 16th notes, I feel like it better expresses the kind of pitiful character that he wanted to convey. So yeah, that's interesting. Just gonna put these away now. In future episodes, we'll definitely be taking a closer look at all these different pieces to see what might have been going through his mind. But for the moment, I won't spoil too much. Of course, not only the individual pieces, but also the set as a whole has gone through quite some significant changes. Some pieces that are in the Marie's booklet aren't in the fair copy, and quite a few pieces in the fair copy aren't in the final published version. Now, just because these pieces were removed doesn't necessarily mean that they are of inferior quality somehow. Quite the contrary. Personally, I really liked the Lagoon in Venedig. The only reason I could think of, why maybe he removed it is that potentially might be posing too much technical difficulty to a beginner. But yeah. Besides the pieces, Schumann also created a set of advices for young musicians that I really believe are little gems of wisdom. He had intended to publish these advices together with the pieces. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it for the first edition, but he did do it for the second edition. In any case, Schumann's intentions were quite clear. I can show you this. So if you pull up the page here, you see that he's got all these quotes here. I had to go and look up what they were in actual printed text because this stuff is hard as heck to read. I'm going to admit that I cannot actually really read it just like this. But I kind of went through the pain and did my best to see which ones might have been corresponding to which printed ones. And I am pleased to announce that I did manage to figure some of them out. So I got up here. This is Das Studium der Geschichte der Musik unterstützt vom lebendigen Hören der Meisterwerke der verschiedenen Epochen wird dich am schnellsten von Eigendünkel und Eitelkeit kurieren. So that translates about to the study of the history of music, together with listening to live performances of masterpieces from different periods, is the quickest cure for complacency and vanity. And over here, a bit further to the right, we can see, Spiele fleißig Fugen, guter Meister, vor allen von Johann Sebastian Bach. Das wohltemperierte Klavier sei dein täglich Brot, dann wirst du gewiss ein tüchtiger Musiker. So that means work at playing fugues by good masters, above all those by J.S. Bach. The well-tempered clavier should be your daily bread. Then you are sure to become an able musician. And if we look at the page, we see here the sketch of Melody, which is actually the first piece in the set. So nowadays, for whatever reason, these advices usually aren't published, aren't included with the work. But at the time, it was quite influential. For example, the French version was translated by none other than Liszt himself, and Tchaikovsky later did a Russian translation. So if you haven't read these before, I think you'll find it worthwhile to maybe take a look at them. Without revealing all of them, I present to you two that I quite like. For example, virtuoso tricks change with the times. Only where proficiency serves higher purposes has it value. And another one here. In judging compositions, decide as to whether they belong in the realm of art or merely in the domain of superficial entertainment. Stand for the first and do not let the other irritate you. Those are quite interesting. In any case, Schumann's dedication to this project extended beyond just music and words. And he had really quite a clear vision of how he wanted children to receive this album at first sight. He came up with the page layouts himself, and he went to the best illustrators of the time, eventually settling on Ludwig Richter. Interestingly enough, Richter's son studied with Schumann for some time, although apparently his talents were not particularly outstanding. In any case, Schumann might have been able to land a discount through this relationship. In the end result was very satisfying. I think it's a cover rather unlike anything before its time. Here I present to you the second edition of this album, which was published in 1849. We can open this up and take a closer look at it. So you see here all these very lovely illustrations that correspond to individual pieces. For example, this one over here is the one that corresponds to First Loss. I think it gives a hint to perhaps a possible interpretation of the piece. Now, if we look here, we can see the prices, and you see that they've been scratched out a little bit, and the prices have obviously been increased. Maybe it's inflation, maybe it's the publisher or distributor marking things up, but we don't really know. In any case, the booklet here that I have on hand is 1 1/3 thalers, which doesn't sound like much, but if you look at this nice binding that we've got here, it's well done. We got the leather binding, got the gold embossed letters that maybe indicate the name of the owner at the time. And I mean, judging by the age of this thing, it's old. It's not a later day edition. So it's interesting to note why somebody would have been putting this inexpensive book in such a nice aftermarket binding. But it turns out 1.3 thalers is not cheap at all. If you look at the historical economic data, at that time, the amount needed to sustain an adult for a year is about 40 thalers or so, which means that an unskilled laborer probably would have been earning around that amount. So if you look at the numbers, 1.3 thalers is 40% of someone's monthly earnings. From that sense, I think it's easy to see it be basically impossible for a laborer to afford this album. It was really intended for the growing middle class. Now, if that still doesn't give you an idea, if you are earning a minimum wage of $15 an hour, your monthly earnings are about $2,500 or so, this book would be a whopping $1,000. $1,000. With a high price like that, you might be wondering then, how much did Schumann charge? He originally asked for 50 louis d'or from Breitkopf and Hartel, his usual publisher, but they refused to publish it based on the fact that his previous few works didn't quite sell well enough. What a mistake. He then went to Schubert, not Schubert the composer, but rather Schubert and Company, who successfully bargained with him for a price of 40 louis d'or and accepted the work as is, except for one thing, which is a change of the title. Now, previously, the album was intended as a Christmas album, but Schubert was like, man, we should be selling this we should be selling this stuff all year round. Like, don't come and talk to me about the seasonal stuff. So that's how we eventually got this title, Album for the Young. Now, going back to the 40 louis d'or, how much is that? At that time, the exchange rate between gold and silver was about 15 or so. Each thaler was about 16 or 17 grams of silver, and a louis d'or was 7 or 8 grams of gold. So each louis d'or is roughly $7 or so. That means that in one swoop, Schumann got what would have took a laborer 7 years to just earn. And of course, I mean, that's a one-time earning. So we can take a look at a page from his pocket notebook from that time to get a better look of his income and whatnot. So you can see here, quite interesting. This is him probably counting the money he has on hand, as well as maybe future earnings for the rest of the year. So we can see here we've got Clara 160, Robert 65, and we've got a bunch of plus signs, probably expected incomes from different publishers. So that means he's looking at earnings in the tune of a few hundred to $1,000 for the year of 1849. I mean, it's hard to imagine that even with a seemingly comfortable amount of money for, an upper middle class life, he still complained about not having enough money. Kind of makes you wonder about what his expenses look like. But I do know that he had to pay for a piano teacher for his children because Clara at that time had gotten quite busy. Of course, now let us finish off with a very interesting aside. We can take a look at this. Do you notice something off about how this looks? In fact, this piece is not from Schumann's hand. After Clara's death, the manuscript eventually made its way to Schumann's grandson, who was a farmer. A thief somehow got a hold of this information and then went ahead and cut out and stole pages from the manuscript, which were, this stuff had been stored in a locked compartment. So, it's not really obvious as to why the thief made do with only the few pages instead of just taking off with the whole thing. But we do know that the two pieces that were cut out happen to be country life related. These are the land song and the harvest song. So yeah, that's a bit of perhaps funny trivia or something like that. That's all for the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more videos coming next in the series, so maybe stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll see you next time as well. Bye!